For this example, we have the left-hand side as the sum of the two fractions, but the right-hand side has single term, which is only the 2 times secant of the x. We're gonna work on the more complicated side, which is the left-hand side. From what we have, cosine x divided by 1 plus sine x plus the fraction 1 plus sine x divided by cosine x. We have two terms on the left. We have two terms here. And the right-hand side has only one term. So we're gonna consolidate, like we treat, like we add the two fractions together. When we have two fractions and they don't have the same denominator, we're gonna have to find the common denominator. For this case, the common denominator gonna be the product of 1 plus sine x and cosine x. So we're gonna start with, I'm gonna write original expression and then make some room to multiply top and bottom. So we're gonna multiply the first one, top and bottom, by the term cosine x over cosine x, and the second term with the expression 1 plus sine x over 1 plus sine x. Now, both of them have the same denominator, which is the product of 1 plus sine x and cosine x. And the first part, which is the product of the cosine and cosine, becomes cosine square x. The second part is the product of 1 plus sine x and 1 plus sine x. This part, we're going to have to do some more algebra. So the numerator, the product of 1 plus sine x and 1 plus sine x, or the perfect square, you can do the distributive property by 1 times 1 is 1. The inner and inner, which is sine x, outer and outer is another sine x. And then the last and the last would be sine square x. Now we're going to write the numerator as cosine square x plus 1 plus, since these two are like terms, that's twice of the sine x plus sine square x, all divided by 1 plus sine x times cosine x. As we see, the cosine square and sine square, that can be substituted by the value 1. So I'm going to put a note on the side here as cosine square x plus sine square x equals 1. That's one of the identity that we're going to use. Now, the numerator becomes 1 plus 1, which is 2. 2 plus 2 times sine x, all divided by the quantity 1 plus sine x multiplied by cosine x. Another thing we can do, the numerator has the common factor 2. We're going to factor it out. So then the numerator is 2 multiplied by 1 plus sine x divided by the quantity 1 plus sine x times cosine x. And then, as you see, this factor can be reduced. Now, it can be simplified to be 2 divided by cosine x. And what is 2 over cosine x? Recall the 1 over cosine x is the same as the secant x, or secant x is the reciprocal of the cosine, because our goal is to make it toward to the term 2 times secant x. One more time to finish up the problem. Then we get 2 times secant x, which is the same as the expression on the right-hand side. So we put a note here. This is the right-hand side. And now we are done proving this identity.